It's pretty safe to say that Space Marine power armor has changed and evolved over time, and in the last video, we looked at how power armor grew and evolved throughout the Horus Heresy and the Great Crusade. But today, I would like to look at the power armor of the modern 40k setting, as there is a significant difference between the two, not only in terms of design, but in terms of lore as well. For a bit of recap, Marks 1 through 6 laid the groundwork that would lead up to the modern Space Marine power armor that we have now, and the culmination of all of those efforts would come in the form of the Mark 7 Aquila pattern armor, which is easily the most iconic looking Space Marine armor. From 1990 to 2017, when you saw a picture of a Space Marine, this is what you saw, and because of this, these suits are everywhere, even now in the current canon with Primaris being more prevalent. In lore, the Mark 7 and its various components are still in use by many Space Marine chapters, as it has served the Imperium venerably for a good 10,000 years. The suit would first see use during the tail end of the Horus Heresy during the Siege of Terra, admittedly in limited numbers, and was based on the modifications and refinements that the Mark 6 Corvus pattern had, with extra armor, a fantastic looking helmet, some upgraded systems, and the very iconic Imperial Aquila on the chest, giving it the armor's namesake. This suit is the jack of all trades, master of none armor. It is reliable, easy to repair, is backwards compatible with armor components from previous suits, and the Corvus pattern helmet is honestly quite common. You see it being used with the Mark 7 suit quite a bit, especially in the hands of, say, veterans or as a relic of a certain chapter. I really don't need to say anything else about this suit. It's cool, it has a badass helmet, and even now, this suit is my favorite power armor design and probably always will be. The Indominus pattern Terminator armor, which did originate during the Horus Heresy, but is more well known for being used after it, as most legions did not have access to it outside of the Iron Hands and Imperial Fists, this would replace the dwindling supply of Tartaros and Cataphracti, as those designs would become increasingly harder to make, as well as the various design documents getting lost over time. So as a result, this would be the Terminator armor most common in usage both by traitors and loyalists over the 10,000 years after the heresy. It's a simpler design, easier to repair and make, but because of that, it has a decent amount of drawbacks, and overall, it's probably the worst suit of Terminator armor available, which is saying a lot considering the fact that Indominus can still take a bunch of punishment and keep functioning. And while it is more common than, say, other Terminator suits, it's still not in the hands of every single Space Marine chapter in large quantities, with the only chapter that I can think of that actually has a decent number of Indominus suits being the Dark Angels and their Deathwing, which would not only become a fan favorite, but is iconic in and of itself and is probably one of the main reasons why I like the Dark Angel so much. There are a few different variants of Indominus that are purely cosmetic. Say, oh hey, here's a relic pattern for this chapter, or this or that, or blah blah blah. But there is one that isn't, and that's the Gorgon pattern. And this was designed by the Iron Hands because they decided to say, hey, we have this incredibly modular design. Let's just make it absolutely insane and ridiculous, because they have this suit with this energy field that makes it so whenever you shoot at it, you get flashbanged. But this field is incredibly radioactive and would kill the Space Marine using it. And keep in mind, Space Marines are really tough and not a lot of things can kill them. Well, I mean, you can still kill Space Marines, they die all the time. But, like, you can't poison them and stuff like that. So if this is radioactive to the point where a Space Marine would get hurt, that's pretty bad. So the person having to use it would basically have to be like 90% cybernetics. Because it's the Iron Hands, of course they would do this. Despite that, the suit is still really, really cool, and the Iron Hands still have a few suits of it, but not many. The Mark 8 Errant suit is a bit of a refinement of the progress made by Mark 7, but unlike the Mark 7, it did not see widespread adoption whatsoever. The suit itself is fine, it's stronger, allows for a greater range of motion, it has a neck plate that can stop rounds from ricocheting and braining the Space Marine when hit. But its advancements that it brought to the table were not worth the expense, as while the suit does have its advantages, it was far too expensive to build, and those resources would, say, be more useful to making like Terminator armor than just slightly better min-maxed Mark 7. On occasion, you will see, say, a few leg plates or a helmet being used by like a company commander or a captain, but most of the time you are not going to see full suits of it, and the only faction that I know of that actually uses the Mark 8 suit in its entirety is the Death Watch, and them being part of the Inquisition would make sense why they would have so much of it. There is also a suit called Artificer Armor, which is basically another min-maxed Mark 7 or 8, but it's specifically made for an individual within a chapter. It's often stronger and more usable than traditional Space Marine armor, but its overall look is basically identical to standard Space Marine armor. For example, Cato Sicarius is a famous user of Artificer armor, but his suit, outside of like the extra flare and bling, I guess, for lack of a better word that's attached to it, looks basically the same as Mark 8. And for a long time, this is what the Imperium had. Until Belisarius Cull decided to kick the door down, cracked his knuckles, and decided to give us not only new Space Marines, but armor, guns, vehicles, and anything else his mad scientist brain could conjure up. And the result of this would be the Mark 10 Tacticus armor, which, in all honesty, is the best Space Marine armor just fundamentally ever. This suit, this is the good suit. This is the thing that everyone wants because it's just objectively that good. It's basically a production version of Mark 8 mixed with cosmetic elements of Mark 4 and armor protection equivalent to, if not greater than, the Mark 3 Iron suit. It is incredibly tough, easy to repair, compatible with various different armor mark components like helmets, and is, like I said, a great suit. However, Tacticus is a family of suits, and the best way I can describe it is it's basically just a Space Marine armor Mr. Potato Head, with additional components being available or components being able to be removed to create different types of suits. Gravis armor is the best suit in terms of protection for any Space Marine outside of Terminator armor. It has extra armor, obviously, a extra face shield that can be used to protect the wearer's face. You can mount jetpacks to it for, say, Inceptors, which are kind of like assault marines that only use really tiny storm bolters that deploy from orbit, which are really, really, really cool. It's often used by captains and other high-ranking members of chapters when Terminator armor isn't available, although there are many cases where someone will opt to use Gravis armor instead of Terminator armor, as Gravis does not slow the user down as much as Terminator armor would. The Phobos variant is really, really, really cool. It is a stealth suit, primarily used to fill the gap that would, say, be used by traditional scout armor, which in and of itself was a suit designed to be used by Space Marine scouts and scout companies, which are typically the training companies of Space Marine chapters. The benefit Phobos brings, though, is that it's an actual powered suit, making basically every form of scout armor obsolete to a degree. But it is incredibly beefy, it is on par with Mark 7 in terms of defensive capability, and is completely silent. There are no sounds from servos or nothing. It is the first true stealth suit Space Marines have ever had, and I'm not even gonna lie, this and the Mark 7 are my favorite in terms of just overall look. I don't know what it is with the Phobos armor, but it's just, I love the way it looks. I don't really know what it is. I just love it so much. And I really want to kill team of these guys, but I already have a giant stack of unpainted models, and I don't need more of them. Is that gonna stop me? No, but hey, whatever. There is one more variant of Tacticus armor that is called Omnis armor, which is like a Gravis Phobos hybrid equipped with jetpacks and a ground support role fighting vehicles and such. And to be honest, I thought that was it. I thought that was all the different variants of Space Marine power armor, and that was wrong. There's one more, and it kind of threw me for a loop. The Mark 12 Runic armor, used by the Space Wolves, and its primary role is to resist psychic attacks. Considering the fact that it's used by the Space Wolves, who really like to fight 1,000 Suns, that makes sense. But that's not what confused me. What confused me is why the Space Wolves decided to say, hi, we're jumping from Mark 8 to 12. And to be honest, it was already a bit of a jump when Cull just said, fuck it, we're skipping the number 9 and going straight to Mark 10. But they just decided to say, hey, instead of going like Mark 9 or something, no, we're just gonna skip straight to 12. Does this really matter? No. Is this me just kind of doing this for a gag? Yes. But I'm gonna be honest, reading Lexiconum to briefly fact check for this video just kind of made my brain scramble, because I didn't know what this was. This apparently only existed in Codex Space Wolves from 2009. And to give you an idea of how old I am, I was 7 years old in 2009. So, yeah, I don't know. Despite its bizarre naming scheme, it's pretty cool, but it's making me question whether or not the Space Wolves can count or read. But overall, that is all the various suits of power armor available to the Space Marines. I really enjoyed making these two videos, as power armor is really cool to me. It has been since I was a child. I am a very, very simple man. If your faction has cool dudes in power armor or cool looking armor, that's my favorite. Fallout, Brotherhood, or Enclave. Why? Power armor. The lore is cool too, but the power armor appealed to me first. Halo was a bit of a different story, but in general, if you give me a story about a giant 8-foot tall green brick punching aliens, that's a good time. Clone Troopers? Not power armor, but damn it, I want to cosplay Fordo one day, and you can't tell me I can't. If you want to learn more about these different marks of power armor, I would recommend reading a few different things. If you want to learn more about Primaris armor, read Codex Space Marines 8th, 9th, or 10th edition, as that was the editions where Primaris was introduced, has become the main focus. So that's where most of the lore and direction and writing is going to go to. And if you want to learn anything about Firstborn, look at Warhammer 40,000 compilation or any Codex Space Marines pre-8th edition. Thank you all very much for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, please consider becoming a member and doing the whole comment, like, subscribe thing. You've heard people yell at you to do this for years. It's fine. You all know what to do. I really appreciate your support, and thank you very much to the channel members for supporting me. It really means a lot. Thank you all very much for watching. Have a great night.